the very trade, the discounted sales, the fee arrangement that produced that forex in the first place. You cannot claim the upside of a trade and disown its downside. And let us also be honest about where the real conversation lies. We, the minority, are not here to relegate the profit of GoldBod, the profit GoldBod has published it in its own account. We are here because what happened off the books, the operations, the fee structures, the discounted sales that made that profit possible in the first place. Substance must always be judged over form. GoldBod took Bank of Ghana's money to assay gold and collect its fees. It cannot claim the credit that comes with the revenue while pushing every loss into Bank of Ghana's balance sheet. This is precisely why Bank of Ghana has decided to stop GoldBod's gold purchasing operation going forward. The losses generated by GoldBod's own purchasing, pricing, and sales decision can no longer sit on the bank's books while GoldBod enjoys the credit. What we are witnessing is a disingenuous accounting arrangement, clean on the surface, dirty in substance, and it is ordinary Ghanaian taxpayer who is left carrying the risk. That ends today. We are asking straightforward questions, and we expect straightforward answers. Who are the off-takers? Why were sales discounted? And why is the mandate to trade gold on the country's behalf producing losses the country was never told about? Now, let me deal with the numbers Ghana cannot ignore. The IMF tells us that 17% of the value of every ounce of gold sold by the Bank of Ghana simply disappeared. It vanished into the gap between the rates paid to miners and the rate used for the books. Add the fees paid to the middlemen. Add the discounts handed to off-takers. This is not rounding error. This is not teething trouble. This is a structural bleeding of our national purse. And it was not the opposition that found it. I repeat, it was the IMF's own economists. And the government has accepted that indeed these losses are true. Now look at what this bleeding has done to our central bank. By the fund's own numbers, the Bank of Ghana's equity stood at negative 93.8 billion cedis at the end of last year, negative 6.7% of GDP. Our central bank is technically bankrupt, therefore. And the single biggest driver of that collapse in the 2025 was gold operations, GoldBod. GoldBod's own domain, 22 billion cedis. That's equivalent of the 1.7 billion US dollars in 1 year alone. Therefore, ladies and gentlemen, let's call it what it is. These losses are not bad luck. You don't trade in gold and make losses. They are not a difficult market. They expose the crass incompetence of GoldBod's management and misaligned policy of the government. No serious institution loses this much money by accident. This is what happens when an untouchable few are handed the nation's gold with no one watching and no one willing to ask questions. Ghanaians have already sacrificed much to keep this economy standing. We tighten our belt for the sake of stability. That is why it is so painful to watch this scheme quietly give away sums that will make any right-thinking citizens weep. We did not endure hardship so that billions could vanish into unexplained spread and unnamed off-takers. Let us be honest about what $1.7 billion actually means. It is hospitals that will not be built. It is needless maternal death that would not be prevented because the theaters, the blood banks, and the trained hands that could have saved a mother in labor were never funded. It is schools that will not be built. It is poor roads that will not be constructed. Roads that claim life every week. It is water treatment facilities that will not be constructed, even as our people's water is poisoned by galamsey this government has failed to control. Every one of these is Ghanaian life diminished by a loss that does not have to happen. Now let me emphasize that the latest IMF report, which is the IMF's sixth and final review of Ghana's extended credit facility program, completed on 10th of July 2026, concerning the financial consequences of the NDC government's domestic gold purchase program. According to the IMF, this domestic exchange program, which the Bank of Ghana accumulated gold and intermediated foreign exchange to the private sector, generated, for emphasis, 1.7 billion US dollars, which is the equivalent of 22 billion in 2025 alone. So you are looking at approximately 1.5% of Ghana's entire gross domestic product. And again, we are not ignorant. We are not speculating. We are not a manufacturing allegation. It is not partisan interpretation. It is a finding reported by the IMF after examining Ghana's economic and financial program, and it demands honest answers. Let me have this. Ladies and gentlemen of the press, this is a summary of the IMF report. After the bulky report, they came out with this, which is the selected issues dated August 2026. International Monetary Fund, IMF country report number 26/213. Those who are doing fact check. And it says, International Monetary Fund, Washington, D.C. This has been accepted by government, and government is acting on the concerns raised by the IMF. And to those who are thinking that the Gold Board has not incurred any losses because they decided to use Bank of Ghana as its alter ego. When I say alter ego, what I mean is that you use another institution to carry all your burdens on your behalf. So you appear clean. So you can conveniently say that the Auditor General has gone through your books and you do not have losses. But the losses were incurred by you. So how can you record profit and the cost is not incurred by you? Who does this? Anyway, the IMF says that, quote, in 2025, the significant scaling up of the domestic gold purchasing program operations led to losses of 1.67 billion US dollars, 1.5% of GDP, almost entirely related to the gold for reserve dot purchase. This amounted to a loss of 17% of the value of the dog gold sold by BOG. On whose behalf? GoldBod. This is here. It's here. It's there. Paragraph 13. Page 10. And ladies and gentlemen, we need to emphasize something. We, the minority, we work as a team. When the minority leader speaks, he speaks for the party. The party has a political committee we call the tripod. The flag bearer, who is the leader of our party, taking us to Jubilee, the party machinery and parliament. These three units work together with a policy coordinating chair, my respected colleague Kojo Oponkruma. We coordinate and speak with one voice. It doesn't matter who speaks. So when a matter is raised on policy, a chief executive of an institution cannot choose and single the leader out for insults. In the minimum, the caucus knows it brief and will not speak and blow hot air. That is the report I've shown you. So now the Ghanaian people will see who is ignorant, who is doing mischief, who is lying to the public. We will not just come out and say anything because of partisan convenience. What is happening is bad. There is crisis ahead of us. Our friends must better listen and pay attention and not allow the IMF to rather come and talk to them before they listen. When things go bad in our country, it affects all of us. So we are here to hold their feet to the fire and make them accountable to the people of Ghana. We are not here to trade insults, and that must be clear to them. Ladies and gentlemen of the press, from the transactions arranged between GoldBod and Bank of Ghana, GoldBod was not an uninvolved spectator. It is the very institution with a statutory and operational mandate, as I've said, to buy, sell, weigh, grade, assay, value, and export gold and other precious minerals in Ghana. Therefore, the role GoldBod played in the transaction places significant responsibility on it because, one, GoldBod participated directly in buying, aggregating, assaying, and exporting the gold. Two, Bank of Ghana provided the financing. Three, GoldBod earned fees from the transactions. But when the program generated substantial financial losses, those losses were not reported on the balance sheet of GoldBod. What kind of voodoo accounting is this? Who does this? And then GoldBod wants us to believe that it has not made losses, it is clean, and wants to mislead the people of Ghana. No, that cannot be the truth. The arrangements made require much deeper scrutiny than government has so far been willing to provide. Ghanaians must also remember how this story developed. When initially the Fifth Review raised concerns about the gold program, the discussion centered around an estimated 214 million quasi-fiscal loss identified through the September 2025 report. The IMF explained that losses arose from the trading activities, fees, and exchange rate movement, and specifically called for greater transparency, governance, and risk management around the GoldBod linked channel of the domestic gold purchase program. We were subsequently told that GoldBod itself had made no loss. However, Section 13 of IMF country report, as quoted supra, stated. The real question, therefore, is what did Ghana lose from the transaction? The IMF has now answered the question, which I've quoted supra, for the full year, an equivalent of 22 billion cedis. The Ghanaian taxpayer ultimately stands to lose on this. And now, for emphasis and further explanation, the accounting location of a loss does not change its economic reality. This is perhaps the most important point that we, the caucus, want to put across. If GoldBod was legally an agent of Bank of Ghana, there may be a technical accounting basis for recognizing the underlying trade losses at the Bank of Ghana rather than recording them as GoldBod's own corporate losses. But Bank of Ghana is not interested only in which ledger the loss entered. We must ask, who designed the arrangement? Who approved it? Who executed it? Who controlled the risk? And why safeguards failed to prevent losses of this magnitude? An accounting structure cannot be used as a shield against public accountability. If one state institution is responsible for buying, aggregating, assaying, and exporting gold, while another state institution supplies the capital and bears virtually all of the downside, Parliament is entitled to ask whether the risk allocation itself was prudent, and we pose it, whether the risk allocation is prudent. In fact, the structure creates an obvious governance problem, where the entity carrying out the commercial activity receives fees based on transactions, while another institution bears the principal financial risk. Incentives can become dangerously misaligned. The institution making or influencing the operational decisions may enjoy the upside of increased volumes and fees without carrying an equivalent share of the downside when the transactions perform poorly. That is precisely why strong risk limits, independent oversight, transparent pricing rules, and clear accountability arrangements were indispensable. The 22 billion outcome raises serious questions about whether those protections were adequate. Now, I repeat, GoldBod cannot hide behind accounting technicalities. GoldBod, I must say, is entitled to make the accounting point that it was purchasing gold on behalf of Bank of Ghana. But agency does not extinguish operational responsibility. An agent entrusted with billions of cedis or public resources remains responsible for the quality of its execution. GoldBod's own description of its mandate confirms that it occupies a central position in Ghana's gold trading structure, with exclusive authority over buying, selling, weighing, grading, assaying, valuing, and exporting gold. Therefore, GoldBod must tell Ghanaians the following. 1. What prices were paid for gold? How were those prices determined? What premiums, if any, were paid to secure the supply? How were international off-takers selected? At what discounts were those gold sold? How much was earned by GoldBod in service and asset charges from transactions financed by Bank of Ghana? What commercial risk did GoldBod itself bear? What transactional risk were passed automatically to Bank of Ghana? What internal risk controls existed to protect the financier, the Bank of Ghana? What corrective measures were taken as losses accumulated? And most importantly, if GoldBod controlled critical part of the trading process but Bank of Ghana absorbed losses, where precisely did commercial accountability reside? These questions aforementioned go to the heart of the very matter we have raised. So, this model where entity earns fees and another absorbs losses requires scrutiny. In fact, it stinks. It stinks. The structure deserves particular attention because it creates what economists and governance professionals will recognize as a potential moral hazard problem. If an institution earns transaction-based income for purchasing, assaying, and aggregating gold, while the financier bears the underlying trading losses, then increasing transaction volumes may increase the agent revenue even where the overall program destroys value for the principal. Any responsible government confronted with this 22 billion loss should immediately investigate whether the incentive structure encouraged excessive volumes, inadequate pricing discipline, or insufficient attention to trading costs. We therefore reject any attempt to answer the public concerns merely by pointing to GoldBod's reported surplus. Yes, we concede that it is the Auditor General that has conducted an audit, but the Auditor General was not given access to the full picture. If the Auditor General knows that indeed the costs of GoldBod's transaction were borne by Bank of Ghana, Auditor General would not declare surplus in its accounting reporting. Therefore, GoldBod's profitability and the profitability of the transaction it executed for BOG are two different matters. A middleman can earn a fee while the principal loses money. Really? The question for Ghana is whether the country received value for the risk it assumed. Now, the most damning fact that may be what happened next. Actions often reveal more than explanations. After the experience of the old financial model, now we hear the Bank of Ghana resolved to stop financing GoldBod, all because of what the IMF said. GoldBod itself announced on 11th of August 2026 that it has ended its role as buying agent for the BOG. And since March 2026, it had ceased receiving BOG funds to purchase gold on Bank of Ghana's behalf. GoldBod said it had instead transitioned toward mobilizing financing directly from commercial banks and off-takers. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to pause here and help you with some explanation so that in your reporting, you would also understand the story. It wouldn't be that the minority led by Afenyo Makin is telling a Koko Anansi story. We are not telling you a Koko Anansi story. If all was well, why are they taking these steps? In fact, the GoldBod chief executive said the IMF itself did not understand the transaction. He said publicly that he thinks the IMF doesn't understand. All the economists at the IMF, he said they didn't understand. He accused my friend Kojo Oponkruma, who did BCom at Kivas, that Kojo doesn't understand accounting. I did BCom. Of course, I abandoned Nisam along the line and did my law program. But Kojo completed his BCom. BCom is accounting. He accused Kojo that he doesn't understand accounting. He said this on TV3 program. Then he went on to attack our colleague, the chartered accountant, former Minister of State at the Finance Ministry, and chair of the Public Accounts Committee, a fourth termer in Parliament, Honorable Abna Oseyasari, also accused her. Then I took the last hit. But what the GoldBod chief executive has forgotten is that when initially the fees were around 15% and the minority raised the first red flag and the press conference was held by our respected colleague Oponkruma on our behalf, there was an immediate emergency board meeting, a joint emergency board meeting by GoldBod and Bank of Ghana, and they quickly reviewed the fees to 9%. That was the first point of indication of the minority. According to them, we are ignorant. If we were that ignorant, why is it that when we raise a red flag, the 15% that they were charging, they reduced it to 9%? That was the first point. And when we escalated it through a motion on the House floor, they now went further and reduced it to 5%. So the question is, all those initial losses, now we want to put away IMF, all those initial losses, if the charges were legitimate at 15%, why didn't they remain the way they were? So the minority must be commended for saving the public purse. Why the insult? Why the attack? If the IMF is wrong, why the remedial measures? Why are they taking steps to now say that they are moving away from the original model and now they are doing something new? So they must account for the 22 billion losses. It amounts to causing financial loss to the state, and GoldBod is responsible for causing financial loss to the state. The minority will say this firmly and boldly. It doesn't matter the adjectives you use to attack our personality. We know that a day of reckoning will come. They should remember that post-regime accountability awaits them. 22 billion Ghana cedis in just a year. It's not me, it's not Mama Pat, it's not this handsome man standing behind me, it's not this other handsome man, it's not these handsome men who are saying it. It is the IMF. And government has accepted, conceded that indeed these were huge losses. Why the insult? Pourquoi? Minewo. Egomede. Adana mudi di atem. Moko ton gold aboka. IMF force sika podu eti say 22 billion maboka. Mwa jia tumu se maboka. Nyebonyumo. Ekakasia na mabo Ghana 22 billion cedis. Na ye minority dia oma tro amwa jia tum na ye kan wasem. Na mu bedi din atem. Na afanyo maka ye say na opon kroma ti say na abno say asati say. Enye wo be ko social media ke didin atem ena be sesa dia IMF atro. Ye ba ye no ye nim se sebe ebinum de omotecha maso no eye doko nti ye de IMF report no bae nti ye sremu nsem trofo mo waso de kese eye nsem abinum be ka nyina na sese mo tie ne saa ebinum kan tro omu twa ntro so ana omo aye so mom na e ka no kre wo to gold wo digwa wo akoboka wo si bu e ka na wabo no wo de akotro wo bi buku mu na wo de dia waton na esika na ba wo si wanya mfaso nti wo de ayeka na ya woka na what be da we be company mienu company ba ko na ye di staff salary ato na company ba ko so na ye di sales akoto nti ye ba ye si o menya mfaso na eka na wo boy and the cost of sales no way
22 billion
nti yes semu atem di die ne de en sheki but ne kure wo mu ne say so far say obi akoye adwuma mpo obebi na sende iyokofo tata no iyokofo tata binum attorney general ye press conference osio obi mpo oye ayaban adwuma eka 5 million cedis 3 million cedis 10 million cedis yetumi frɛ wo iyoko na wakoda ho na yesi fa ejapade a asumbo for branch ya mobile na ne GoldBod's for be de abeye hu ti o me ba o we de sa 22 billion losses here almost GoldBod's abokai and then who bill ezika ben na ye de bedi bill oh we as said ye tie yes wo wi ofunsa na wa hwe wonsa wi ase aye wo no se tumi ba wonsem na se wo de tata obi a hweniye NDC for nam MPP for abokrono MPP for abokrono MPP for to say MPP for to say gold kaka mun koton no gold mun koton gold moko boka 22 billion cedis afi baako ya kan ya no mu visa mu didi atemu a na ya bohu na mu di eti ebubom enti no ye de ayeka ne se ya mincha de parliament ebebie ye nua no se onu de ope debate ya ti asesa ye penisa na ye debate bia ye kohye kuko biemu aye ye pese ye kai ne se so ope debate a GoldBod's for so omu pe debate a omu din kan enkanche majority for no because ye di kan the first motion by no ye see ye debate na ye ma GoldBod's embra na yenye enhwehwemu no majority for no omu se omu ntie ensentrofo amu nyina mu ni inti no parliament bia Yeah, the motion for eba. Some motion where you be dealing with the $1.7 billion, which is the equivalent of 22 billion. And no, sa ekano and yebe somono GoldBod wo. It is a GoldBod for some my crowd dia. Omudi can chair new majority leader. Onimnyam for agaga non ti ase se. En kobane so omudi 189 no ebe blocko. Yes, speaker so say emotion no eba more for technicalities mba. Na kobane say ye approve ye ni say for the sake of governance, for the sake of transparency. We the minority will not relent on this. The GoldBod has thrown a challenge that it is ready to debate this issue. If indeed it is ready, then we propose to the majority, don't stop us the second time.
Yes.
Don't use your 189 to vote against an invitation to GoldBod for a probe into what accounted for the 22 billion losses. Don't use your supermajority to stop scrutiny. It is your own man, your darling boy, that called for this. So, majority, please, our motion is ready. We will file it before we get back next week, and we pray that you, the majority in parliament, will fully cooperate with us, the minority. Something must be done. We need money for the hospitals. Yes. If government says there's no money to complete the Agenda 111 project, if government is still borrowing, yet it can find 22 billion, and this 22 billion, according to the IMF, is vanished into thin air. Sikana ira, sikana she, sikana wahe. Intanya atem didie. Yesre, ye juma. Yesre Ghana mine. Munta yechi. Nebe bia 22 billion wono. Yenya yenhwehwe. Enye personal attack, enye obi, ene sebi ye jealous, ana ye time no, ene ye nebi. This is a complete policy failure. Institutional failure. Buying promising reset no and living up to expectation. Private sector soon they are burdening the private sector with taxes. Ghana for electricity are buying by almost 30% electricity tariffs. Who got up petrol? Omu charge you 1 Ghana cedi per liter. Asenya to me bio. Ejuma omu promise here 1 job 3 shifts. Atonsium omu entumi anye. Omu say 24-hour economy yentunhwe. Omu ankasa esse so omu ba ban mu a ahunto baba Ghana. And then the yenim ni say omu chire mu a na omu akwachi MPP ni chino. Yenchino na sana omu yese nyina no. Ye omu yese nyina no omu ankasa omu echiguo. Omu yese nyina no omu echi eguo. Wo chi obi say wabo aban na oman no ka 50 million, 5 million, 10 million, and the minority focus na mo threaten mo be chi omo obi a waye minister da na wo si wakosa ni bibi na mo threaten sana mo ankasa within 1 year GoldBod nkwa 22 billion cedis. Na why na esese ye de proye ata ide ehye no abaya ama Ghana ase sika elusi sika kese sei. Why between MPP ni NDC why ena ebo omaneka na essence omu kura aban tumi enti akoban se omu de tumi no eye dia omu pese omu ye nti dia me sre ene se majority moma kwan na GoldBod 22 billion eka no parliament bia yenka wasem GoldBod yesre mu enye atemdidie mumbe yi mano na eka no mutan a maboka GoldBod maboka mutan wetua ga no Ghana sika yen na yeka minority na yeka o IMF 4